This episode's made possible by Planful.
Hi, this is Anna Chadwick, Executive Vice President as CFO at Pitney Bowes, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 958.
And then engagement. Engagement is a critical key because it tells you where they are in their churn life cycle. If they're highly engaged, they're going to stay. If they're starting to exercise less, then that's a predictor, and we need to get in there and try to, re-engage them again so that they don't cancel the subscription. And now what's exciting is we can even tell you which workouts are the ones that are most used. So it helps me in finance. I tell them, like, every feature, we have to think of it the same way we used to think about every SKU. Every SKU should earn its place in our distribution center. So every feature should earn its place in our platform.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Aina Konold, CFO of BowFlex. Among those industries, the pandemic is known to have afforded an extra helping of quarterly chaos. The home fitness market is perhaps deserving of special mention. Few industries sustain steeper gains and subsequent losses amidst COVID's comings and goings than the home fitness market. And few industries perhaps demanded more reflexive decision-making inside the management cockpit. At BowFlex, that cockpit has been occupied by CEO Jim Barr and CFO Aina Konold, both of whom entered the C-suite during the latter half of 2019, only to have their 2020 flight plan upended by COVID. Along the way, CEO Barr has demonstrated a willingness to address tough questions, but so too has Konold, whose facility for disarming unwelcome news is perhaps worthy of envy among her CFO peers. You be the judge. We'll be back after this.
Hi, I'm Rowan Tonkin, Chief Marketing Officer at Planful, and we're a proud sponsor of CFO Thought Leader. At Planful, we're empowering teams just like yours to drive peak financial performance in every corner of your business. What sets Planful apart? We have purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. This means we can get you up and running within weeks, and it requires minimal IT involvement. So you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business in your key financial processes. Best of all, you can't outgrow us. We take the pain of growing away with an unmatched ability to scale with you. You have an endless runway with Planful. See why over 1,300 customers around the world choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com and see how you can make financial performance a team sport in your business.
Hello, we're speaking with Aina Konold, CFO of BowFlex. Aina, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Jack.
Well, Aina, we've been looking forward to speaking to you. You have certainly an interesting career background, and we always begin by just asking you to look back and try to identify some of those experiences you feel prepared you to become a CFO. What would come to mind?
Well, I have to begin. I have a very different beginning to my finance career. When I was a senior in college, I went to Stanford. The big accounting firms were recruiting liberal arts majors to join their ranks. So I majored in English literature. So I did not study accounting in school. And the firm, PwC, and I took a chance that I had transferable skills. I could learn accounting, and then I would contribute because I'd think about things differently. I would approach auditing from a different angle, and it definitely is true. So I graduated. I took intermediate accounting the summer before I joined the firm. And so I began my career basically as an outsider. I was different than my peers. I didn't study accounting. And when you're an auditor, inherently you're the outsider. I mean, when people interact with you, you're the auditor. You're on the outside. Sometimes they want to keep you out. And my job was to figure out how to learn the business so I could, communicate some thoughts on how they could improve it, validate the numbers. So I came always from the outside in. And I think that helped me so much as I grew older in my career because I am really good at explaining financial concepts to non-financial people because I was one of them. And I like to share the story with leaders that I meet so that they know that there's no stupid question. Ask me anything about finance. I will demystify it for you because I think every functional leader should understand finance. I should be able to communicate it to them, and then together we can understand the story of the business via the numbers.
Was there something, did you consider book publishing? Where do English majors go to? What prodded you
A
in that
lot of
direction?
them go, I was thinking of going to law school. So I'd actually thought to go to law school, but I spent 2.5 years working for a law firm in undergrad. And I realized that most people in the law firm, because there's conflict, you need lawyers when there's a conflict. So you either have angry people being sued, you have angry people suing, you have lawyers who are angry with each other. And I thought, I don't want to spend a lot of my time with people who are basically dissatisfied. I want to be in a place where I feel like I'm contributing and we're like finding solutions together rather than, hitting each other on the head because somebody broke some contract.
Understood.
And then my second experience, and this is really more about broader leadership. I'll never forget this, and I owe a lot to this man for giving me this big aha moment. It was when I was a newly promoted manager of field finance at Old Navy. So Old Navy is a subsidiary of Gap Inc. And I joined when we were first opening. We were opening like hundreds of stores a year and like first billion, then second billion. So I was the newly promoted manager of field finance. And your job is to work with the store leaders to help them improve store profitability. And one of the most important meetings of the year is the annual field conference that happens once a year in the summer. But I was newly promoted and I had a baby. I had a 6-month-old baby. And I realized, oh no, I'm going to go on a business trip and I'm still nursing. So I can't go because I have a baby. So I went and talked to the president of the division and I said, I'm sorry, I know this is really important. I can't go, but I'm going to prepare my team. And I had all the backup on how to do this. And then he said, well, do you have a babysitter? I said, yes. He goes, well, could you bring the baby and the babysitter to the conference? And then you could nurse in the evening and during the day. And then you could, because we need you. And if the issue is just you need to nurse, let's just bring the baby and the babysitter. And it was the first example for me of like super creative problem solving. And I'll never forget that. And then the second thing was he just gave me this feeling of such value, right? Like you are a young mother. That's very important what you're doing, nursing your child, but you're also a very important part of my team. And if I can find a way to solve that, then together we win. And that really struck with me. And I remember that. And whenever I run into a seemingly difficult, unsolvable problem, I try to open my mind and go, what would Ken von Lonergan do? How would you solve this seemingly insurmountable problem?
Would you describe yourself at that point? Are you a controller? Are you, have you entered?
So manager level. So that's one level below director. Controllers typically would be director level. So I was maybe 10 years experience. So still relatively young, but this was a very important role because there was no director over this group. So I was the lead of this group and I needed to assist and teach the team. Like we had gotten to the growth phase where when you're growing a lot, the sales outpace expense growth so quickly, like you don't need to think about it. But we were getting to that curve where we needed to teach the stores that needed to pay attention to like the other metrics so that profitability could continue growing faster than sales. And because of my ability to talk to non-finance people, the field loved me. Like I never used jargon. I could break it down into the simplest terms. I often use like how they would think about it for their own home finances. I think that's when most people, it really clicks in their head. If you kind of bring it back to how they run their household, then you can really explain something seemingly complicated and then they can understand. Like a lot of people, the biggest expense in any store is payroll. And for a long time, they just used payroll as a percent of sales. So if sales grew 10%, then payroll will grow 10%. But I reminded them, you, the general manager, I mean, maybe your salary is growing the same rate as sales, but likely not. I mean, sales were growing 20, 30, 40%. So your salary stays relatively fixed. So as a percent of sales, it goes down. So it's not the right way to think about it. Certain parts should be done as a percent of sales, but certain parts are fixed. So I'll never forget when that big aha moment, the fixed versus variable payroll. And then they were able to figure out like how to, squeeze out more profitability and then invest it. Like, because the way I said it is, if you're running your store, it's like a little business. Save enough, and then some of it you drop to the bottom line, but some of it you invest because you need to, prepare for next year. Like maybe you invest in maintenance, you invest in training, you invest in new people that you're going to get ready for. If you're going to expand the store, you need another store manager, etc. So that's was what I needed to explain to them. And the leaders at headquarters were really excited about it, and they wanted me to bring it to the field.
It seems like we're saying that, well, this was Ina's language skills. This was her ability to explain things that, in a way, more people can understand. Put it another way, it seems like your language skills made you more strategic to the company right away.
I would agree. And I think when I was younger, I didn't even think of it in those words. It's just when you, in the skills you learn when you major in English or history, I mean, you're reading a lot of things. You see a lot of data and information. Then you have to figure out the theme. You synthesize it and then you create a theme, and then you need to support it. Like maybe you see something, like you see a pattern emerging, then you need to validate and support it. And then you get more confident that you have found the right theme, and then you can extrapolate it and then expound on it. So this is what you learn when you're that kind of major. And so when I got into the business world, first I'm really curious. So I like talking to people. So I loved field finance because there was a lot of go to the store and sit with them and understand. So what I like to do before I recommended any change in a payroll model was go to the local store and then sort of witness what that would do if I suggested that, we could probably do this with 10% fewer people or 20% fewer people, and walk the walk. And an Old Navy store has concrete floors. And so, there's a lot of I think that's why the field really liked me, because they felt like I tried to understand their perspective, then I would bring back to HQ, and then I would model what I think would be the ideal financial outcome, and then I would go and test it with them. And that was really, really helpful, because then sometimes you find out things like this always works except for when you have a new delivery or when, you're doing shrink counts, things like that. Like if you sit too long, and this is what I say to finance people, you can't do your job if your preferred way to do it is you sit in a cube and you run spreadsheets. That's not going to work, especially in today's environment with so much change. You have to be supremely connected to the business and like a lot of iteration. Better to do it 80% done, test it out, and then come back and refine it, rather than get so married to a model that you've, spent hours on. And then you feel like you have to impose it on people because you've already invested too much in it.
How did you advance in your career then? I'm just curious. There was a time maybe where you were just waiting to get to the next level. What was it a question of? Were there other skills for you to acquire? Was there more management experience they wanted you to have if you did reach a plateau?
I think that first job gave me a lot of confidence to raise my hand, even if I don't know how to do it or I haven't been trained for it, because I knew that I had transferable skills. So I think that first job at PwC was so pivotal in my development. So then after PwC, I went and joined Supercuts as an accounting manager. And the reason I did that is because my mentors were saying, you don't have an accounting degree, you have auditing experience, but you need accounting before you can really move into other parts of finance. You need to gain the skill set. So I was an accounting manager for 2 years, so I can AR, AP, GL, account reconciliations, I can do all that. But what I liked about it is it was the other side of the auditing experience, right? Because I've always come from the outside looking in, but now I'm creating the documents that the auditors are then auditing. And it was very interesting for me to interact with the auditors from the other side. And then after that experience, and this probably is a lot of people's experience, I met a lot of great people at Supercuts. A lot of them went to the Gap, and then they remember you, and then they recommend you. And that's kind of how it worked out also at the Gap. I think relationships are so critical in our development, and a lot of finance people, sometimes they're introverted or they think, I'm not good at forming relationships, but you don't have to be super gregarious. I think if people know that you're hardworking, you're thorough, you do what's right for the business, I mean, this makes an impact, and then they remember you. And that's often how it would happen. I would get recommended, and then I would be in the interview, and there'd be sometimes people who have more experience than me. But sometimes my bosses have said what they thought was really interesting about me was my total openness about, I don't know how to do that, but let me tell you how I learn how to do something. And that was interesting enough and intriguing enough that they would, not always, but I would be given a chance. And then I just worked my butt off, made sure that I did all my homework, read everything I could about the topic or the new role. So after I went to Gap, I was in FP&A, and then I moved to Old Navy to be in field finance. And those were still relatively similar because it's the P&L for the store. But then the next job after that was real estate, which was very different than anything I'd ever done. But the reason I got it is because the field loved me. And the real estate team works very closely with the field. And they said, oh, she's really great. She helps us a lot. I think we should give her a chance. And so then I had another kind of component of running stores. Now I'm deciding which stores to open, which stores to close, where to, reposition them, how big they should be. So that's sort of how I moved from, and at the Gap, they were very good about identifying high potentials, and then you get rotated around.
I don't know if you were a mother at that place in time, but are you largely in the Bay Area, or are you being relocated at times?
When I was in my early part of my career, it was primarily in the Bay Area because I had 2 children, and my husband also worked, so I was not open to relocations. But that's an interesting question because my last job at the Gap was CFO of Gap China. And my mentor there, the CFO of Global Gap, asked me, do you think you're at the place now where you might consider a relocation because your children, are a little bit older, one's entering high school. I don't know if your husband would be open to it, but we think it'd be really great at going to China and building up our business there.
And what happened? Yes, that was...
Yes, and so later it'll be a story that I talk about too. It's in hindsight, I think it's great to be fearless and raise your hand, but sometimes you should test the waters first. I agreed to go to China. I had never even been to China. I mean, I've been to Asia, but they're not the same. Mainland China is super different. I'm not Chinese. I don't speak Mandarin. I had never been in that environment, but it just was an incredible opportunity for the company, like one of our biggest growth opportunities. And I felt like my real estate background, my field background, I was the head of investor relations at the time. I could communicate to a lot of external parties. I thought it'd be a really, really great opportunity for me to contribute. And so I said yes.
Well, we look forward to hearing maybe a little more about that. Your communication skills seem to have set you apart from the start. We know that as you get more senior, likewise, your presentation skills, they become a little more sophisticated, I would imagine. But there was a time where someone, a CFO or a regionals, tapped you on the shoulder and said, I'd like you to be part of this, Aina. We could use you whether it's in front of the board or a senior management meeting.
And a lot of it came when I got tapped on the shoulder to join investor relations. And it was actually, I was joking, oh my goodness, my major is coming in super useful right now. I'm a great writer. I wrote our CFO script, and then I wrote a lot of the answers to the Q&A, and I was able to work closely with Corp Com. But what was really great about that role, and I highly recommend it to many finance professionals as they're moving up, and I try to give it to my team, is you get press training. Because these are the 3 things I want to communicate, and regardless of the question, these are the three things I'm going to say. And you see politicians do that really deftly. Like they never answer the question, right? They just repeat their 3 points that they want you to remember. And that was so helpful to me because it married I like telling stories. I mean, I write papers. Like that's what I did for many years. And that's why I majored in it. I mean, I love reading stories. I love reading history. My favorite books are historical fiction because it just sort of it gives a little bit more color. And I think, and that's how I like to talk about the business with people. I like to tell a story of where did it begin? How did we get here? And then how are you going to contribute to changing the story? So investor relations was good training. I learned how to talk to the press. I learned how to talk to investors, but it also helped me really clarify the story of our company because you don't get an hour to tell the story of your company to I mean, you maybe have 10 minutes. So the whole concept of the elevator pitch. So you learn that. And I wish it was something that more companies invested in for their leaders as they're growing up, because in today's world, especially with the younger people, their attention span is so much shorter than mine or yours were. Like when we were growing up, like you need to get to the point, you need to catch them with like that catchy headline and then get them to listen to you for like the 3-minute time span that they have. They're waiting for the next TikTok video.
We'd love to maybe have a few more career related questions for you later, but right now, let's find out about BowFlex. It's a company many of us might know, but your arrival there, I'll point out, the end of 2019 was with COVID around the corner, was not necessarily great timing, but you fill us in. Tell us about this company and your arrival.
So I was one of the first hires of our new CEO. And the reason I chose to join is because I just loved his vision of where he wanted to take the company. And the vision was created before COVID hit because he arrived July 2019. And my first day in the company, there was a meeting where basically we threw out the next year and a half product pipeline and replaced it with all new equipment that was going to come in the next 18 months. So very, very pivotal time. And what he wanted to do was really live out the mission of the company, which was we wanted to make people healthier. And the old way that we did it is we sold you a piece of equipment and then we actually didn't know what you did with it. And maybe we never heard from you again. You might be working out, you might be using it as a towel rack. We don't really know what you're doing with it. But connected fitness, the reason he loved it was because it was an opportunity to have a daily communication with this individual and then help them achieve their goal. And from the beginning, our approach was dissimilar from the things that had become quite popular. Like I think Peloton did a great job bringing spin class to the home, but that's not our angle. Our angle is you individually. What are the things that you're working on? Maybe you just want to be able to run a 10K. Or maybe you're worried about your blood pressure and you just want to make sure that you have, and it's a mental health exercise almost where you just want to, forget about the world for a little bit and ride your bike in a different scenario, etc. So it was very unique to the individual. And what he wanted to do was create something that was adaptive and not, and almost like, I hesitate to use the word AI because we're not quite that advanced yet, but we're going there, where we would create a systematic thing that would adapt to your goals, to where you are, to what you did last week on the machine, so that you could continually progress. And then ideally, we would be a lifelong partner. And the other thing that he was really in love with is the first day you get the machine will not be the best day, because every single week or month we'll be updating the software. And there'll be something new for you to experience, some new incremental capability that it didn't have. So I was just really interested with how do we take what's basically a hardware company and turn it into that. And I had spent most of my life in consumer, but not very much in tech. So I thought this was going to be a great experience. I have a lot of experience on the consumer side and how to move units, but I don't have a lot of experience on the tech side, but I'm super eager to learn. I think this will be a great combo. So we created the plan to begin connecting the machines to this AI-oriented platform. And we actually decided early we're not going to even try to compete with the classes. Many people offer classes. We'll just rent them, buy them, license them, but we won't create studios. We're going to focus on finding the AI path. Like, how do we actually truly create an interactive, adaptive platform? Then COVID hit, and suddenly there was all this demand, and we hadn't really issued the new products yet. So a lot of the old products. But what we did with COVID that I think we did really excellently is we used it to empty our warehouses because people were willing to buy whatever was available. So we were able to successfully empty our warehouses of all our old product. And then we started making the new product. And then the goal was, how quickly can you make new products? Because the demand seemed like unstoppable. But I said, there's only so many machines one can consume in a short time period. And I think we have to be prepared. And we had actually said 2 years up and 2 years down. So there were 2 years up, we were ready, but I said we have to be ready for 2 years down. So we didn't grow our headcount as quickly. We chose to rent versus buy. We did a lot of things in preparation for the downturn. But at the same time, we were building the new BowFlex that we had imagined in 2019. And that began with identifying who really is our true target customer. We created a muse. We know a lot about this person. We've named her Remy. She likes variety. She likes to be challenged every day. She does not like classes. She prefers to do things individually. We built a team that can create products that are in an iterative fashion rather than, let's design something and then we just sort of throw it out at the world and hopefully people will buy it. It's a lot of interaction with the consumer, a lot more product testing. And then we built a team that could create the Journey platform. All that while we were handling the up and down of COVID. And a lot of what really hurt many companies with COVID is what happened with supply chain. I mean, it's stories. We're going to tell each other these stories 20 years from now, that like it just was unprecedented, a lot of challenges for companies to overcome. But for us, we needed to make sure, and this is what I kept telling the team, every single quarter we have to make the continued progress on the long-term strategy while delivering, maximizing the benefit that we can get from short-term COVID gains. Get the cash, bring it in, and then use it to fund what we're doing with Journey. So what I am so excited about with our company is we have the vision that we created when Jim brought the team together. I love it. It's to build a healthier world, one person at a time. It's about the individual. We're going to make the best strength and cardio equipment, and then we're going to connect it to this unique, individualized platform that's intended to make you achieve your goals. And we are about 90% there. So when I encouraged the team, I said, I know externally people think we are a COVID darling. Oh, they went up and they went down with COVID, but they don't see what we're doing underneath the waters. And the new set of products that we're going to be delivering to the company in next year and the year after are really the reflection of all the work the team has done in the last 3 years. And I'm so proud of them. It really is like just the grit and the resilience to be able to withstand all the ups and downs externally. Because when we were looking at our long range plan, I don't think we did not anticipate that with the downturn from COVID, like demand coming down, we would also have the inflationary. That was not in our plan. I mean, the inflationary pressure, the interest rates rising, like all that was not in our plan. And so the combination of those two things have been quite difficult, but we have little green shoots of promise coming out, and I'm excited. I think the team has grown a lot. They've really become more resilient, and the new products that we're delivering to the market in the next year and a half, 2 years, I think are really the reflection of the new BowFlex.
Curious about your workforce then, as you try to make this connection with your consumers, with your customers, as you described it. Seems like it's the technology there is much more sophisticated. We're talking about software. We're wondering about your workforce, whether you've had to hire more technology engineers and what have you to make this come to life. Are you becoming more of a software company as well?
We had to become more of a software company, but the way that we did it in a couple of different ways. First, there was always firmware because Internet of Things was already happening. I mean, things were connected to Bluetooth. So we had that group. And then we started augmenting with both internal resources and external. Pre-COVID and in the middle of COVID, I mean, you can imagine the big tech companies have a lot more pull. So we had to be really creative in how to staff software. So we found good outsourced companies that were willing to partner with us. So then they had their own set of workforce that we could find. And then we really targeted people who would be moved by our mission. Because we're a smaller company, we're in Vancouver, Washington, so it's not Seattle, it's not San Francisco. But we have a mission that I think is it's so inspiring. And the people who come to work here are very driven by that mission. So that's the kind of software engineers that we end up attracting. And then importantly, we acquired a company in Switzerland. Their name is Way, and they had created an engine that it's really an important part of Journey, which allows for motion tracking, and it can use just your regular phone camera. You can be lifting weights and we can track your motion and we can give you form coaching to make sure you don't hurt yourself when you're doing your squats or you're doing your dumbbell exercises, and it can count your reps. So we bought that company, and then that company coming into BowFlex really, they did a lot of great things of changing our mindset because they're younger, they're software oriented, like software first, so a lot of iteration. If you think about our background, we're manufacturing, 40 years in the business, we know how to make amazing machines, but the timeline to make a new product is many months. The timeline to make and then discard a new software idea could be weeks. You try something, customer didn't like it, pull it out and replace with plan B. But on the hardware side, you have to be much more careful. So what's been great is finding a way to combine those two groups, the strength of the hardware side where they have to think warranty, longer term durability, and then the strength of the software side to say, how can we iterate and respond? So let's not make things so rigid that we can't adjust if needed. I think it's been a great marriage, and it's exciting to see the team coming together because what we want to provide our customers is an experience. Like when you get on that treadmill or that bike or that Max Trainer, you want to experience the exercise that you need to meet your goals. And so many of our customers tell us a lot of it is mental health. They just want to escape. Like they want to do this for this 45 minutes is their time for themselves. So they either watch a show or we have a feature called Explore the World where you can just bike or run or walk in a different part of the world. And this is important to them. But what's nice is it tracks it. Like for me personally, when I get on the bike, it could say, last time you did this, you went this speed and this distance. You want to go a little bit longer. You want to go exactly the same, or maybe a little bit, softer. Maybe Jim says maybe you had too much wine last night. You want the easier path. So that's what we do. And I think it's been really great having the opportunity to have the two teams interact more and adjust and learn from each other.
We'd love to know if, given all of what you just described, this software that really begins to understand the customer's needs better and respond to them, that's all about data.
Yes.
You wanted to be able to measure customer relationships in a new and better informed fashion. Are these things really being adopted? Are we seeing the activity? We invested this money. We want to know that we're measuring this and we can educate ourselves as to whether the customer is going to continue this relationship. I mean, what are you measuring that helps you understand better those relationships?
The first step was to actually build a team that, it's a skill to be able to gather the data, monitor the data, keep the data clean, and then teach the organization, garbage in, garbage out. Like the data now, the criticality of getting the data correct so that when you log in, to our website, that we recognize that it's the same you that later then gets on the machine. Or because we sell in retail, I mean, we should be able to know if maybe you bought the bike from our website, but you went to Amazon and bought the dumbbells. The criticality of knowing that that's you and that we should combine all the information about you so that we can talk to you is important. But in companies that are less sophisticated in their data management, there's a lot of data cleanup that needs to happen. So the first thing we needed to do was build that muscle. We weren't good at it. We didn't have the data, so we didn't even collect it. And the retail team was separate from the direct team, and they didn't really communicate with each other. So we built the data team, and then we have created this culture where we say that basically everybody could be an analyst. Our COO is super passionate about this. Like, he has these days, he calls them analyst days, and they're like several times a year where we just teach how to mine data, how to analyze it, how to visualize the data. But IT reports into me. So it begins with having a really good enterprise data and analytics team that teaches us the right way to become more sophisticated in how we manage our data. And then after that, all the different ways we could analyze it. Right now, we're early. We collect the data properly. We store the data properly. We've cleansed the data. We've certified it so you can report on it. Excuse me. But we are preparing because eventually I will have to disclose in my SEC filings the members, the paying members, how many have churned, and then engagement. Engagement is a critical key because it tells you where they are in their churn life cycle. If they're highly engaged, they're going to stay. If they're starting to exercise less, then that's a predictor, and we need to get in there and try to, re-engage them again so that they don't cancel the subscription. And now what's exciting is we can even tell you which workouts are the ones that are most used. So it helps me in finance. I tell them, like, every feature, we have to think of it the same way we used to think about every SKU. Every SKU should earn its place in our distribution center. So every feature should earn its place in our platform. If 0.5% of the people are using it, it's probably a feature we can remove because people forget, every SKU has work associated with it, storage costs. And I like to, we kind of have minimum hurdles where you say every feature SKU has to deliver this kind of benefit. Otherwise, you have to cut off the tail. It's too long. So we used to offer a lot of streaming services. We've narrowed it down to 3, and maybe we should narrow it down to 2, but there used to be 5. But everybody has their favorite because, software engineer A says, I love XYZ. I don't want to name it because I don't want to offend, but maybe 2% of the people are using it. Most people use Netflix or Amazon Prime. If you put those 2 in, you've covered 90% of the users, and the other 10% that are distributed across all the other ones, they'll be disappointed, but that's okay because we have the 2 primary ones. So that's how we choose to do it. And I think it's a new skill for the team to think of a feature like a SKU, but transferable skill. My finance team knows how to value SKUs. We're just going to transfer it to valuing a feature, but you need to learn about the cost of a feature, the incremental cost of every instance of it, and then we'll come up with minimum hurdles, and then we could, I think of it like a portfolio review. You just rank best usage, lowest usage, and if you want to improve your profitability, you sort of draw the line somewhere and cut it off.
Just curious, when you think about how what portion of your week is spent perhaps with the data people or with the technology people, and compare it to your life before BowFlex. I mean, is it surprising to you how much time you dedicate now to this data conversation regularly? I know it was part of your life before, but
it's not surprising to me because it's something that I think we're all seeing it happen, right? Mm-hmm. Like, people have said the AI impact is, for those of us who remember when the iPhone got introduced, it's as impactful. Like, I don't think we can fully articulate it now, but we can imagine, right? Like, the same way that, when the way we work with the phone, 15 years ago, I mean, these all would have been so different. So I'm excited about it. And what I want to do is I want my team. I think finance should be the most data fluent of any function. I mean, I think all functions should be data fluent, but we should be the most fluent because this is another version of the numbers. We need to be able to read the data, tell the story, and point people to the right place because otherwise it's just a lot of information. Like you need to filter it because like you need to have good dashboards. It's almost like the best way to do it is even like what are the pruning that you have to do. Like we should collect everything because we don't know later if it'll be important, but we don't need to display everything because I think it would be overwhelming. And finance would have the best transferable skills to be able to say, here's how we should prune it, here's how we should display it, and what should we focus on this month versus at the end of the quarter versus at the end of the year.
The realities are it's a tough market, or has been over the last year. And we're talking about what sounds like a very promising future. But, what are the metrics that are keeping you up at night? And as you, the investors are knocking on the door asking you about all the time, they might not be, visionary in terms of where the company's headed. But right now, that's what they want to know about. What would you tell us? What are those metrics keeping you up?
Well, if you asked anybody in finance, what are the priorities of finance, they would tell you three things: liquidity, managing the SEC, and managing the IRS. Because I said, if it's not one of these three things, you have my full permission to not do it. Because we had a RIF in February, so we reduced our staff. We're operating with some vacancy. And I said, when you don't know how to finish all the work in front of you, these are the top three things. And number one, liquidity is like really big. So if you can prioritize based on that, and so it's all about cash.
Yep.
And one of the things that I think a lot of functional leaders are very P&L versed. They understand how to read a P&L, they get it, but not everybody can translate into cash flow. And it's been my passion for the last year and a half to help the organization understand cash flow and understand that, especially in a small company, how critical cash is. In our industry, with all the pummeling that we've had, the ones who survive will win. And what we need to survive is we need to make sure that we maintain our liquidity. And I'm really proud of how we managed to do that. I think some of the maybe naysayers are like, how are you not having a problem with liquidity? And I'm like, well, we're just stubborn. We're doing all the right things you're supposed to do to manage liquidity, but also because we believe we're managing a dip. So you just have that feeling of optimism. Like, I just have to manage through this complicated time. I'm willing to make some sacrifices to make that happen because I believe in the future. And we make really great products that people need. So we need to make sure we survive so that we can continue living the vision and delivering on the mission.
I should have probably touched on this with you before when you brought up AI several times, but it's something we're talking to finance leaders about. And over the last 12 months, certainly they've become, it seems like they're having lots of conversations with different parts of their organizations. But what does AI, the promise of AI, mean to you?
I think it would be a different answer depending on how large your company is. Because the larger your company, you can afford big investments, and then the return would be easier to get. When you're smaller like we are, I don't know if I could justify big investments if, I don't have very many people. Like the return on like lower labor might not be enough. But what I hope it can do for my team is it would just free up the more mundane tasks. Because then we can use the system to do the things that are like, we spend most of our time doing, like preparing for the analysis, getting all the things together, doing the variances, highlighting things that are unusual. Like if I could get systematically that to happen, and that it would learn like which variances are worth mentioning to me and which variances are just normal course because there's a seasonality, then my team could be lifted from that and then really feel like they're doing the value added work that they love doing, which is, now that you have the numbers, go speak to the business owner and go, I see a problem here. Like the trend is going this way, and if we don't do something fast, we're going to run into a wall. So what can we do now so that we can make that have a different outcome? But when you have, a lot of our systems, everyone complains about their systems. Nobody has good enough systems. You spend a lot of time gathering, validating, preparing for the analysis, and you end up not having very much time to analyze, and then even less time to actually implement the solution. So I would want to minimize the time spent on the gathering, let the system do that for me, and then my team can then focus on the value-added analysis.
From what we've heard about AI, it has a place in the customer experience. There's an important component there that will likely come into play. I would imagine the supply chain as well. I understand AI applications can be very handy there as well. Am I missing other areas?
I think when you say customer, obviously the product itself will be augmented by it, but I think also customer care.
Mm-hmm.
Like I look forward to us being able to we try to do it now. You've been, I'm sure, in those customer care phone things where you can't get out and they never, or you go online and it's just a big circular reference. But I think the promise of it is it could help you because it would find all the answers. And then our job would be, and this is why the data is so important, to put the information where the system can find it. And then open it up more so that other people can provide the content. Like my seat keeps squeaking. If we find, the solution is some WD-4, like why they don't need to call somebody to get that. It should be something where they could look it up and then the virtual assistant can help them. So I'm looking forward to that so that more self-service for the customers, faster response time. And then in supply chain and even in like our demand planning, I think the systematic capability to study large swathes of data and then find a link would be so great. Like in apparel retail, weather was really important. And sometimes people thought it was an excuse, but it's not. I mean, if it's too cold, no one's going to buy a tank top. And if it's too warm, they're not going to buy a sweater. So having the ability to do all that, and then you could, if you had a responsive supply chain, delay the delivery of the sweaters. I mean, don't bring the sweaters if it's 90 degrees outside, or accelerate the sweaters if it dropped to 70. But if you had a system that had the ability to do all that at computer speed, it would be really, really helpful, I think, in supply chain. And then even like if you're looking for early signals, early demand signals, that would be great. Like for me in China, our store count was dependent on new malls being built. But they don't have the same systems here where you can just go to a conference, and because a lot of them are government owned. You know what my early predictor was? Orders of elevators and escalators. It's because malls need elevators and escalators. So then I found all the people that are involved in the elevators and escalators business, became friendly with them, and then I'd sort of get a sense of like, how's, is it going up there? Like it would just give me an idea of potential mall and office building trends. And then like, is it 10% higher, 15, 3, like give me an idea. But those kinds of things would be really great to put into a predictor model, and then it would help you with some demand planning.
Thank you for that. We are up to our finance strategic moment question, where we just ask you to choose just one to share with us. Anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
I think, and I thought about this a lot, and I thank you for sending me all the examples. I think the thing that I want to share is it's knowing when you have to tell the unpleasant truth. And then the key here, though, is because you want to be seen as the solution finder, is tell the truth. It's not good. And here are the options. Because a lot of finance people, unfortunately, stop with here's the bad news. And then the CEO, the board, the rest of the executive team are like, okay, so should we just like curl up in a ball and die? So, and it happened when I was in China. So they sent me to China. I moved there March 2011. And I moved before my family because they were finishing school. And I'm so glad I did that. When I got there, within 2-3 weeks, I realized, okay, the opportunity is actually larger than we thought, but we have severely underestimated what it would take to come in here. When they gave me the job, it was my first divisional CFO job, so I was super green. And the pitch was, well, it's really like a broader FP&A role. So it'll be a good like stepping stone because all the corporate functions will still be there. Tax, treasury, shared services, accounting. Like you just have to sort of run real estate, open the stores, and FP&A. Well, that's not true. Because in China, you can't have foreign entities do all those. Like you have to have your, it was almost for me like a standalone separate company, which would be a lot more expensive. And then the new stores are not going to be easy to find and build. We did not have the right team. We did not have the right contacts. It's very relationship driven. So, and I thought I knew we were going to miss the numbers that our CEO had given at the beginning of the year. And he was not the kind of guy that you could just tell him that. I mean, he might bite your head off. So I knew I couldn't just go and say, I feel like this is the situation or I think this. So I needed to, and I just approach it the way I would any project. You have to gather your facts. So I met with so many people, including the Chamber of Commerce, like all the other expat heads of businesses, the ones who were successful, the ones who weren't, like the ones who were new, like gathered a lot of info. And then I think one of the best things I did was I invited influential financial peers of mine to come visit us in Shanghai so they could be a witness to what I was saying. Because, you know, when you come back from your travels, you go to HQ and you explain what you saw. If they haven't seen it, they really don't believe you. And I had to really tell the executive team of Gap Inc. that the China dream, I think, could still be alive, but so different than we thought. And it was scary because I was relatively green, and what if they didn't believe me? But then I thought to myself, I am bringing facts from experts, and I have allies who are like witnesses. And I think that's all I can do. I can just communicate what I see. I can talk about what, experts are saying, and then I can give suggestions for how we would approach it. And I think that approach has helped me so much because facts are friends. You just bring the facts, but you have to make sure you're not the only one speaking because human nature, they want like validation. They want like somebody second the motion, right? I say this and here's that. And what I said to them is we have to come in actually the same way that Starbucks and Uniqlo and you have to come in guns a-blazing. This is not a light investment. This is a go in there and say that you are going to be Gap and you're going to be Gap for the Chinese people. And it was super exciting. We ended up working with IDO to create like a different way for the Chinese consumer to think about Gap. It's a communist country. And our pitch was you be you, which if you think about how bold that was, it was exciting though, because it's like all of Gap's heritage about individualism, wearing the products all different ways. There's no cookie cutter way to do it because you grew up with the Gap, you would wear the t-shirt differently than I would. You choose different colored jeans. Like there's no uniform, but it's all about individualism. But to do that, we needed to bring a lot more expats. And we needed to bring brand ambassadors who truly understood the brand. And then I also told them we need to think about how we do the financials for China differently. Because if you're going to make an investment and you want to be, 500 stores, there are no retail professionals you can hire. This is a new industry in this country. You have to almost like train them. You have to have a university to train new GMs. And the only way to train them the way we would want to train them is we have to do it ourselves. And so we will have to put them in our stores. So I suggested a different way of valuing the P&L where you would have like expenses put into a different bucket, a different category so that you could compare, are the stores performing the same way the rest of the stores in the world compare? Yes, but there's these incremental costs that are related to us being in China, that in every store, there's an extra general manager because we're doubling our store count. So the moment you open a store, you have to have the new soon-to-be general manager trained at the same time so that when the other store opens, you can transfer them along with half the team to the new store, and then both stores would just have to hire half of the new people. Like all those things we did, and it was because you have to do it the China way, which not super popular. We like to do things the HQ way, and then you kind of roll it out across the world, but we had to do it the China way. But I only felt confident doing that because I had done my research and I had met with so many people, and they all had basically the same advice. You have to go back to headquarters and you have to explain there's the global way, ex China, global way, and then China way. And if they can't do that, you will not be successful here, and you might as well pack up and just don't try, because it has to be all in.
How many years were you living there then, Aina?
I was there for 8
And the
years.
number of store growth, or how would you?
When in our first 2 years there, we opened a couple hundred stores. And then by the time we left, we were there because hundreds of stores by the time we left.
But was it slow at the start, and then yeah?
Oh, incredibly. The first year we were supposed to open 25, 30 stores. We opened 11.
Was there a turning point that you remember where you finally sort of found the groove or got the rhythm?
It was when I was able to convince the team and headquarters that we could go beyond the tier 1 cities, because China lists their cities tier 1, tier 2. And when you hear tier 2, as a Westerner, you think small. So I said, well, no, because tier 1, like Shanghai, is like 25 million people. So it's like a super city. So tier 2, and I said, I think the best thing to do is, why don't you come here and I'll bring you to a tier 2 city. So I brought the global head of real estate, and he looked at it and he goes, this is bigger than Chicago. I said, yes. He goes, they should not call this a tier 2 city. I said, well, that's what they call it. So we should go beyond the tier 1 cities. We should go to the tier 2 cities. And in fact, we should consider going into tier 3 and tier 4. And in the original strategy was just stay in Shanghai, Beijing, and Hong Kong.
You shared with us how you sort of had to do some consensus building in the beginning. Were you twice a year? Did you have to return to the States, or where you would present, or what was the?
I came at least once a quarter, and couldn't really afford it because we're a startup. So we flew, the management team and I, we would fly economy. And sometimes people, our CEO is flying economy, but I'm like, we have to go. We can't afford it. We're going to fly economy, and we're all going to stay in an Airbnb, because we wanted to prove the point that we are staying within our very small budget, but it is so critical to come here because we are foreigners coming from far away. We need to explain what we're seeing, and then we need you to believe us, and then we need to bring your agreement back. One of my favorite things that I was unpopular with our CFO for a long time was I wanted to install WeChat Pay. So it's like Apple Pay here, but this is in 2013. And the reason for that is because everybody used it. Very few people were using cash. Like, I was observing that the fruit seller at the corner was using it. So we are not ahead of the game, we are behind. And I was noticing that people would come up to the register and they would see that we didn't have the logo that says we accept it, and they would leave because people were not carrying wallets or purses anymore. They were just carrying their phone. The CFO said, why do you have to be bleeding edge? Like, you don't have to be bleeding edge. You just need to wait until we're ready to roll out mobile pay in the rest of the world. And I said, number one, we should not roll out the mobile pay that you created for the rest of the world because it won't work here. And number two, we're behind. So I said, can I have permission to try something very low cost? And if it doesn't work, unplug. No big, basically rent versus buy, no big investment. And the banks paid for it. And it was faster than credit card processing and half the cost. And in the first month, the amount of cash went down to like 10% of sales from like 40%. And then the amount of credit card payments almost entirely shifted to WeChat. So many benefits on the P&L, but then also operationally, because cash is complicated. You have to put in a safe. They have to, cash was almost gone, and then fast, and then the store people felt like we were hip and cool, and and then the banks wanted to promote WeChat being used by more companies, so we got a lot of extra marketing. So it was really, really a great experience. But I'm a rule follower by nature, so it was difficult for me to go against what my boss was suggesting. But I think I did it in the right way, where I heard her point of view, but I said, unless you're telling me I truly cannot do it, I mean, I'm not going to disobey. I mean, we are a subsidiary, but can I just at least try? And then I will take full ownership if it doesn't work, but it worked beautifully.
From episode 862, this is 1 Minute with Patrick McClyman, CFO of Haggerty.
What I've asked the FP&A team to do is let's dive in deeply on cost to acquire and then also cost to serve, right? And there's so many different ways to think about this and how deep into the P&L you go, and how do you think about allocations and all that good stuff. There can be lots of different interpretations. The key is, well, let's just agree on one version of the truth. Let's do the work, lay it all out, push and prod on each other, make sure that we all get to a place where we say, okay, maybe it's not perfect, but this is our representation of our unit economics. So that's the big push with the team. Work with the business units. Let's get to some version of truth on this. And if we can get there, then it just makes all the decision making that much easier.
I'll quickly move to the mentoring round, where we'll ask you several quick questions intended to inspire and inform future finance leaders. We want you to think back the first time you really stepped into a CFO role, where all the responsibilities just fell on your shoulders, sort of what you were just suggesting to us. All of the responsibilities were there. Is there something, if you could just go back in time and just give yourself a piece of advice, something clearly you were not aware of at that time? Anything that if you could go back in time and tell yourself, what would it be?
I would remind myself that taking care of me is good for the team. Because probably a lot of people feel like when you feel such this responsibility, you end up working a lot because you want to make sure that you don't miss something, or let me triple check that again, or, oh, I'm worried about this. So you burn the candle at both ends. But what your team needs from you is a sense of calm, a sense of control. And if you're frazzled because you haven't slept much, it comes out. Even though you try to control it, I mean, they can see it. So I would just remind myself, like, not working every single day is good. Like, sometimes taking off early to get a massage or a pedicure, this is good because it shows the team that you value also when they take downtime. But you need to unplug. And then sometimes, and I know this myself, if I'm taking a walk, the thing I was trying to solve, sometimes a solution will just come out because I've been so overly focused on it. I didn't let my mind relax. And then, oh, I could do it this way. So that's what I would tell myself.
Could you share with us something that maybe people in general don't know about you?
My younger friends or colleagues would have known this, but now, when you get higher up, you realize you can't be as silly. But like, I'm a prankster. I'm a terrible prankster. So I don't do that now because I think that'd be a little scary for people if their CFO started playing pranks. But there was this time at the Gap where I had my team wear the identical clothes every single day. Like, one day we all wore, jeans and a pink t-shirt. And then the second day, like, nobody noticed until Friday. But by the time they noticed, it was freaking hilarious. So I like to play pranks.
We always like to ask for a book selection. You mentioned historical fiction earlier. Don't know if that's the genre of choice, but would you have a book selection for us?
Actually, I was thinking about that, and I strongly recommend this book, Mindset, by Carol Dweck. So she's a Stanford psychologist, and it's all about the concept that people either have a growth mindset or a closed mindset. Huh. And I so believe in this because things are learnable. And I think in today's environment, with all the change that's about to come, the more leaders can tell their teams, like, you can learn something new. we just have to teach you. So I love this book, and I read it periodically, especially when I see that my team is struggling, because there's been so many new things that we've had to deal with. Like, it is learnable. It's a little uncomfortable in the beginning, but it's learnable, and it's okay if you don't know how to do it right away.
You identified the two mindsets. I mean, is the closed mindset, is it a book that helps, combat a closed mindset?
I think it's more even like introduces this concept, because some people believe, like, and I'm not going to do it justice, but that, the closed mindset or the non-growth mindset assumes that some things are finite, like you're either smart or not. You're good at this or not good at this. Versus the growth mindset, it's like, well, I'm not good at it yet, or I can get better. And a lot of it is, that's why I love hanging out with kids. It's like kids. Kids have a growth mindset because they haven't been told yet they're not going to be good at something. Like, think about what they say. Like, I want to be a ballerina. I want to be an astronaut, like, because no one's told them they can't do it yet. And I just, like, you tell them to draw something, they go for it. Like, I try to encourage my team to think about things that way, and to insert more learning time so that it's not so repetitive. And in our field, because so many things there's schedules, right? Week 1, you do this. Week 2, you do this. You could get in a rut so quickly. And with the advent of AI and all the things that are going to change, I think the best thing I can do for my team is let's all learn how to be good learners.
Well, sounds like a great choice for us. So thank you for that. We are up to our final question, where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. And we're wondering about the next 12 months as far as your priorities are concerned as a CFO. What are those priorities that you have?
We had 3 WIGs, wildly important goals this year. And one of them we called Back in Black, getting back to profit. We were on track through the end of Q1, but Q2 and Q3 and Q4 are looking a little bit complicated, but that remains our goal. And that is what we want to strive for. We want to get back to profitability, and we want to do it. 18 months would be too long for me. I'd like to do it in 12 months. And I'm excited about it. I think we have all the ingredients. The team is ready, and we just have to execute.
Aina Konold, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
It was so great to meet you. Thank you.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.